Good evening. Looks like we are on. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Imani Ma'at.
And I'm J. Bernard Kynes Sr.
And we are Sankofa Institute for Wellness. And we have another, I know we always say we have another amazing show in store for you, but we really have an amazing show in store for you this evening. We have the Honorable Dr. Charles S. Finch, who's going to be our guest. But before we introduce Dr. Finch and get into listening to all of his words of wisdom, Bernard usually starts off with a little bit of a spiritual, get us balanced, get us centered, little introduction. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Imani. I want to be brief tonight because we have a piece that we want to share that Imani and I was listening to on our journey back to Atlanta last weekend. And it kind of, in some ways, leads into Dr. Finch, but not necessarily all what he may talk about, but around health in general. So we want to share a few moments of that with you. But first, as we like to do ritual breathing for a few moments to get our mind and our heart and our spirit in sync with what the universe, the creator, the ancestors will have us to receive tonight for our spiritual, emotional, psychological, educational edification. So would you join me if you'd like to participate? I invite each of you for just 1 to 2 minutes to close your eyes and begin breathing. I'm going to strike the ting shawls. And as you hear the ting shawls, please allow the energy of the ting shawls to move through your body, and the frequencies in your brain connect with the frequencies of the ting shawls to center you. 3 breaths in and out through the nose. Give thanks to the ancestors who are welcome to be a part of our journey, to bless this space. Give thanks to the creator, creating each of us in the creator's image, male and female alike, to bless your home, your families, your lives with life. We thank you for being with us. We thank the blessings that we will receive from Dr. Finch. And as we enter into this space and into this place, we pay homage to the ancestors. Ashe.
Ashe.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Amen.
Amen.
Just one paragraph for our spiritual reading tonight. I think I'm going to carry us through this book by Thich Nhat Hanh, The Art of Communicating. But just one paragraph that I share, and then we move into the brief video. He says, under the category of now is the time to listen only. Now is the time to listen only. Deep listening is a wonderful practice, he writes. If you can listen for 30 minutes with compassion, you can help the other person suffer less. If you don't practice mindfulness of compassion, you can't listen long. Mindfulness of compassion means you listen with only the intention to help the other person suffer less. Your intention may be sincere, but if you haven't first practiced listening to yourself, you don't practice mindfulness of compassion, you may rather quickly lose your ability to listen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bernard. That was great.
You're welcome.
Very good. So at this point, are we going to watch the brief video?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Janet, cue us in for a video. We found this very interesting, and it's much longer, but we just have a small introduction piece for you. Janet?
Hello, health champions. How is it possible that even though food is the thing that keeps us alive, millions of people get healthier when they don't eat for a few days? What are the mechanisms for that? How does the body change and cope and adapt when we don't eat? A lot of people have heard that fasting is good for weight loss, but they're still concerned because there's so much conflicting information out there. So today, I wanted to explore these mechanisms of fasting in a little bit more detail to really help you understand what happens when you miss a few meals and how it can have such a profound impact on health. In the first 12 hours, not a lot of changes take place. You're going to be using up some of the stored carbohydrates in your body called glycogen. Your blood glucose will probably drop a little bit unless the 12 hours is at the end of sleep and you're slightly insulin resistant. Then, because of something called dawn phenomenon, you might actually see the opposite. Your body temporarily makes some hormones in the early morning to get you ready for the day, and you might see a little bit of an increase instead. As you're using up some of the stored glycogen, your body will gradually start shifting its energy metabolism into using more fat. And a byproduct of that fat is called ketones. Now, this is barely detectable at this point, but it's a process that's starting. And what we want to understand about ketones is that this is completely normal. Everyone is going to gradually shift into this. The problem is that oftentimes this is confused with ketoacidosis, which is a very dangerous condition that's completely different. That's if you have type 1 diabetes and absolutely no insulin in your body, your blood sugar shoots up, your ketones shoot up, and that's not going to happen unless you have no insulin. Instead, what this indicates is actually metabolic flexibility, that as one fuel starts to run lower, your body starts looking for another one. When you're metabolically flexible, your body makes use of whatever fuel there is the most of. Most of the changes that take place during fasting have to do with energy because we're not eating anything that can turn into energy, so energy becomes super important. The only form of energy your body can use is something called ATP. Everything that you eat, all the food, whether it's carbohydrate or fat or protein, it eventually turns into ATP, which is a very specific molecule. And here's how you can think about this. There's an adenosine group, and we hook on 3 phosphates. And these are high energy bonds. So think of these as springs, that you take a little package and you push it onto a spring and it snaps in place. And now we have energy stored in that spring. And then later, if we undo the snap, then it shoots off and the spring releases its energy. And that's exactly how this works. So when the body needs more energy for anything or every process that requires energy, this is what happens. It pops off one of these phosphates, the spring releases that energy, and we're left with ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So how does that relate to the stuff we eat? Well, if you eat a calorie, we call it a calorie, which is often written as a kilocalorie. I'm just mentioning that. If you see it written, don't get confused. It's basically the same thing. So in 1 mole, which is a huge number of these ATP molecules, we have 7 calories. So that means that 1 calorie you eat basically has 10 to the 23rd of these molecules. It's like a 1 with 23 zeros. It's 100 million trillion molecules in 1 calorie. And if we break that down to how much you need per second, then you need about 2,300 trillion of these molecules per second. So these are such astronomical numbers, but if you think about the fact that you have somewhere on the order of 40 trillion cells, that means that every cell makes trillions of these molecules.
All right. So we always try to introduce concepts around health and wellness, and fasting is an issue that I've always been interested in, and Bernard and I have been looking into the benefits and sharing the benefits of fasting with our listeners. So many things can be healed by our own bodies just by taking a break from eating. You know, there's a line in a video that I've shared with a lot of folks on this podcast and my previous one called Eating the Rave Diet. But it says that eating is the most popular form of unassisted suicide. You know, so we really need to kind of soak that in and think about times where we just eat for recreational reasons. So anyway, Janet will, I'm sure, put up the link to that video so you can see the whole thing for those who are interested in the benefits of fasting and water fasting in particular, which I haven't really done. I usually do smoothies and juices. But all right, so we are going to get on to our topic and our celebrity of the evening, Dr. Charles Finch. And I want to, before I read a brief bio about him, I want to read a poem that I wrote many years ago, which was dedicated to Mr. Calvin Sims, who was a storyteller, author, cowboy, dedicated really to working with youth and with people in the community. And unfortunately, he passed away last year. But when I thought about this evening and introducing Dr. Finch, I said this poem about change resonated with me. It made me think of Dr. Finch and all the lives that he has impacted over the years. So I will do this quickly and then I'll get to his bio. And then I promise, Dr. Finch, you will have the floor. Okay, so change of the heart, the mind, the openness to love, to challenges, risks, failures. Change of the opportunities to learn and to experience life through another lens. Change of our attitudes about change, stepping out of the box that is just an illusion anyway. Change of our perceptions of time, knowing that tomorrow is a day away from when we must start activating our dreams. Change from being victimized to being energized, ghettoized to aggrandized. Change that makes us stop to breathe and be the embodiment of God that we were created to be in the first place. Change that makes us tap into our brilliance in a way that sends us whirling through space, igniting new stars and geniuses along the way. Change so powerful that it makes us realize that the place that had us stuck no longer exists and no longer has power over us. So we are now freed up and fired up to achieve in ways that only mirrors the magnificence of our creation on this earth. That's dedicated to my good friend, Dr. Charles Finch. And so now I'm going to give a little bit of his bio, just a brief bit of his bio. And I think he was very humble in what he shared, but I'll share some of this with you. Dr. Charles S. Finch III was, until June 30th, 2007, director of the International Health at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia. From then on until June 2019, he worked as an ER and primary care physician, after which he retired after 43 years in clinical and academic medicine. Dr. Finch is a 1971 graduate of Yale University and a 1976 graduate of Jefferson Medical College. He completed a family medicine residency at the University of California, Irving Medical Center in June of 1979. Dr. Finch joined the Department of Family Medicine at Morehouse School of Medicine in 1982, and then the Office of International Health in 1989, eventually becoming the principal investigator of a traditional healer survey among the Serer people of Senegal from 1991 to 1992. Dr. Finch led 3 additional traditional healer projects in Senegal ending October of 1995. Between 1992 and 1995, he led tours to the healing ceremonies of the Lebu and Serer peoples of Senegal. Dr. Finch has traveled to Africa 75 times and has written numerous articles, 3 books. The African Background to Medical Science is one. The Echoes of the Old Dark Land, Themes from the African Eden. And in 1998, and I didn't give the dates on the others, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go fast. The Star of Deep Beginnings, Genesis of African Science and Technology. Dr. Finch leads tours to Egypt and Senegal and has traveled to all over the world. And I'm going to stop there because even this brief bio doesn't do him justice because he's done so much and touched so many lives, including mine. And I'm grateful for that, Dr. Finch. So with that, we're going to bring you up and no pressure. have you share a little bit about your journey, and we'll just have a dialogue. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Finch.
Well, Imani, when you ask, all I can do is respond. You know, before her there was none, after her there shall be no more.
Thank you.
Okay, can you give me a little bit more of a, I don't know, context of how
more direction
you want me to proceed, Imani?
Tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about your journey. A lot of young people listen to the show, watch the show, and I think just how you were attracted to the field of medicine. We might start there, and then kind of talk a little bit about how your interest in Africa and contributing to science from an African perspective would be amazing.
Well, my father was a psychiatrist, therefore a medical doctor. There was that. But actually, the most definite influence on my journey into medicine was my mother, as mothers often are. She was determined that I was going to be a physician, not only myself, but 2 of my brothers. So there's 3. She got 3 doctors out of her 7 children.
Wow.
We were Army brats. What that means is my father was career Army until 1963, and so we grew up in the military, and that is a different experience. And I don't want to go too much off of our subject, but let me just tell you the one thing about the military that people don't pick in the 50s. The military was the only integrated segment of American society in the all up until about 1963, even after the 1954 Supreme Court, ruling and all of that. The military was fully integrated by Harry Truman in 1948, the year that I was born. So we grew up in that environment, and we traveled all over the place. We had to. We went from Army. Army base to Army base, all over the country, and even outside the country. We went to the whole family went to Okinawa, 600 miles south of Japan, for almost 3 years. So there was that. So we got in myself and in the family there was bred interest and a love of travel. Because well, there's more, but I don't share my details of my biographies. I'll just. But in let's see, when did that happen? 1964. I actually went to school at a place called the Commonwealth School, which was in Boston. That's a whole other story. The Commonwealth School was founded by the son of the founder of Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch, Fenner and Pierce, the biggest Wall Street firm there is. The son, Charles Merrill, who not only was my teacher and eventually became my employer, was completely the opposite of his father, because he was a liberal and he was determined to do what he could to contribute to Black causes and to Black people. And wait a minute, he was the chairman of the board of Morehouse College.
Wow.
Because because you know who I'm talking about. Benny Mays and him were friends, close friends. And he gave a lot of money both to Morehouse and to Spelman. And so he was, like I said, the chairman of the board of Morehouse College for many years. And mainly because of Mays. He was an admirer of Mays. He was in awe of Benny. So anyway, I went off, first of all, to the Commonwealth School in Boston. And that led me to my college, which was Yale University in New Haven. Now, I had always been interested in history, just interested in history without any academic motivation whatsoever. I've been reading since I was 6 and reading history, just history in all that time. Now, at Yale, I was a major in history, as you can imagine. And it turns out by that time, African-American history had trickled into academia. This is the end of the 60s now, okay? And so I ended up majoring in African-American history, finishing, and let me think, when did I finish? 66, 71, like I said. And that's where, while I was in college, I was at Yale, she was at Mount Holyoke, freshman year. I met the young lady who would become my wife eventually.
God, Ellen went to Mount Holyoke. I went to Mount Holyoke too. Okay.
There you go. There you go. There is a connect. There's a connect.
There's a connection.
And she graduated from at that time co-ed. So when we wanted women, we had to go to a girls' school, or we had to bring the girls' school down to us. And what we would do is that we would meet the buses from the girls' school so we could collect all the Black girls and take them to one of our rooms for a party, and that's what we did. That's one of the ways in which I met Ellen, my current wife and mother of my 7 children. Anyway, okay, now where am I from there? Okay, from there I went on to Thomas Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia. I'm not even sure. To this day, I'm trying to figure out why I chose Jefferson. Well, maybe that's because they accepted me outright. That was probably the biggest reason. So I went, and that's where I went to medical school for 4 years. Did my residency in family medicine at the University of California, Irvine Medical Center. Then from there, came back and worked for the CDC for 2 years before and moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, and moved to Atlanta. Gosh almighty. Let me think that my time. Let me not try to get hung up on timetable, but I don't know, Imani, do you ever meet Dan Blumenthal? He was at, he was at Morehouse College.
Oh yeah. I worked with him.
The Morehouse Medical School. Sorry.
Morehouse Medical.
Yes. He is the one that recruited me to come to Morehouse School of Medicine, and that was in 1982.
Okay.
And I stayed there for 4 years. Yeah. And in the Department of Family Medicine, Office of International Health later on. And that's when I started really traveling to Africa. all, mostly to Senegal. Because most of our projects were in Senegal. But by that time, I was also traveling to Egypt quite a bit. Egypt, I think 14 times. Yeah, wow. Since then. But not just there. Projects in South Africa, Southern Africa. And I was, where else was I going? I can't even remember. Egypt, of course. And other countries in other parts of Africa. I think I was thinking about this the other day. I have been to every part of Africa in the sense of been to North Africa, East Africa, South Africa, and West Africa.
Wow.
Now, and I will say this to you, if you really want an experience of your life, go to Kenya. Because you will go to the there's a place right outside Nairobi where it's just nothing but it's a primeval area. Is beautiful, doesn't describe it. And you could go out in there and it's just completely natural and you almost think that you could see dinosaurs coming, coming and just filling the landscape. Kenya is incredible. Yeah. It's really quite something. It's quite not just something to see. It's quite an experience. And I'd gotten to Kenya 2 or 3 times, and I've been to South Africa. So okay, I need trying to move this agenda along a little bit. All along, I had been studying African history, and with a special emphasis on Egypt. Now, let me just say this. I gotta say it this way because I'm going to say this with a lot of emphasis. Okay, ancient Egypt, the Egypt of the pyramid builders, was a Black African civilization. Period. And that didn't change. There wasn't. Let me see. Foreigners didn't take over Egypt until about 700 BC when the Persians came in. And then there was a succession of them, the Persians, then the Greeks under Alexander. And the Egyptians were happy to accept Alexander and conquer because they hated the Persians. They hated them because the way they treated the local population. So the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and finally the Arabs in 700 AD. And it's been under Arab domination ever since, except when you go to southern Egypt to the Aswan Dam. What do you find at the Aswan Dam? The Nubians.
The Nubians.
And that is what Nubians. That's where they are. That is the Black population of Egypt. They are the true inheritors of ancient Egypt. They are the true remnants of ancient Egyptians. In fact, Nubians, they were sometimes called Nubians, they were sometimes called Cushites. Nubians comes from the Egyptian word nub, which means gold, because all the gold came from the south into ancient Egypt. All right. And that's where you find, if you want to see where are the Black people in Egypt, you go south to the Aswan Dam. Okay.
Dr. Finch, let me interject in that, and you can add to it. But one of the elements that we studied in seminary, and especially under Dr. Kofer, was the mention that most people don't realize when they're reading like the Old Testaments and they read the terms such as the Cushites and the Nubians, that they are referring to Black people in and of the Bible that Dr. Kofer mentioned in his particular book. So I really appreciate you bringing that up to the attention of our audience, that many Christians don't think that we as Black people are presented in the biblical text, but those two terms are definitely present in Old Testament theology. Is that right?
Okay. We're getting off a little bit to ask a question. When the Holy Family had to flee Herod, where'd they go?
To Egypt.
They went to Egypt. And the next time Egypt exists, that Jesus exists, is 12 years later, when he goes to astounds all of the, he goes back up to Israel and astounds all of the, you would call them the priests, with his knowledge. And then he disappears again. He disappears back into Africa. His whole life up until almost age 30 was taking place in Africa. Now, then after, of course, he went into Israel and did his ministry there, and everything that happened to him, we know that. That's all in the Old and New Testaments. But he grew up in Africa.
Wow.
Especially in Egypt, how it is with the people who read the Old Testament. They want to say that the Pharaoh of the old, he was kind of the oppressor of the Hebrews, etc., etc. That's all you know about the Egyptians in the Old Testament. All right. And then, interestingly enough, though, who was Moses? Moses was an Egyptian priest. He was an Egyptian priest, influenced by under the influence of the Pharaoh Akhenaten, 1300 BC, thereabouts. The first person to insist that there's a single God and no other. Now, I mean, other peoples, including everywhere, talk about, yes, there's this supreme God, the supreme creator, et cetera, but there are a whole lot of other gods that descend from this, this original Akhenaten said there's only one God. His name was Aton. The man we call Moses, whose name in ancient times would have been Musa. Was and what happened with Akhenaten, after 17 years, they had the Egyptians rose up against him because what he was preaching was antithetical, at least they thought so, to their religion. And so after 17 years, he just kind of disappears from history. But he left behind disciples. And one of them, 100 years later, was a man we came to know as Moses or Musa. And he was a priest in Egypt. He couldn't, he was all learned in the what? Remember, Bernard? He was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians.
All the wisdom of the
Egyptians. That was only if he was an Egyptian priest himself. Now, like I said, we could go into all of the permutations about how he became what he became, but he's the one that led the so-called Exodus out of Egypt. And then they, of course, what they do, they eventually, after a lot of, in what is now Palestine, Israel. Okay, now this is not supposed to be a biblical explanation of things. We're supposed to kind of get back into medicine. Let's get back to medicine. The earliest and oldest medical textbooks. One is called the Ebers Papyrus, and the other is called the Edwin Smith Papyrus. And there's another one whose name escapes me. Those go back 6,000 years. One is surgical textbook. That's the Edwin Smith Papyrus. And the Ebers Papyrus is kind of a textbook that focuses on the medicinal properties of the medicinal properties of herbs and plants. And now the Edwin Smith Papyrus and other things in Egypt, look what they could do. They had mapped the topography of the brain. They gave names to all the different parts of the brain, as well the different parts of the body.
That was 6,000 years ago?
Now for the ancient Egyptians, starting then,
Okay.
Now,
you're freezing up a little.
Egyptians, although for them, can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're
'Cause
freezing
you're
up a
freezing
little
up
bit.
too.
We are? Uh-oh, that's not
So,
good. And I'm not
I'm
sure what we
sorry?
can do about I'm not sure what we
You're
can do
freezing up
about
too.
that.
Should I just keep
No.
talking?
Keep
Yeah,
talking.
keep talking.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah,
What
we're
about
hearing,
but can you hear me, or
yeah, we're
Yeah, we're
hearing
hearing you.
98% of what you're saying. Yeah, we're good.
is every part?
Hmm.
Yeah, but now
Um,
what do,
we,
so
we
what do you
can
want to
hear you.
do?
We can hear you. Keep
Can you,
speaking, Dr.
my question I keep asking is that I should just keep talking.
Yeah,
Okay,
we hear you.
let me
Yeah,
keep
keep
talking. Let me
talking.
keep talking. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, all right. All right. Now where was I? Oh, the Edmund Smith Papyrus. Also, for the ancient Egyptians, the center of the body and the part of the body that ruled all else was not the brain, but the heart.
Mm.
The heart was not only the center of the circulatory system, it was also the center of the emotional and spiritual system of an individual. Even today, we uh, um, feeling or sense about the heart abides. What do we say? He's all heart. He's good-hearted. He's evil-hearted. Or he's the love of my heart. We use all this terminology to talk about the emotional aspects of ourselves. It's focused. They knew that the brain, was. There's a word I'm looking for. Uh, it was kind of the epicenter of the neurological functions of the body, and they knew that because they actually had a technique called trepanation. Trepanation was apparently first used by the surgeons in the army for soldiers in battle who would have head injuries. And their physicians eventually learned how to do what amounts to brain surgery. They knew how to remove the bony parts of the brain that were of the skull that were impacting the brain. And that's what they call that's brain surgery. That's what it is. Now, the other thing is, because I'm going to, the other thing is, of course, as I say, they knew the medicinal applications of somewhere between 200 and 300 plants, and of course. Now the thing is, too, they were obsessive. The ancient Egyptians, as a whole, and the shall we say the medical professionals in particular, were obsessed with cleanliness, obsessed with it. And not just for medicinal purposes, but just for everyday life. There was obsession with cleanliness, washing all the time. Now, yeah, these things are coming to me as I think. The other thing they did, they measured the pulse as an adjunct to diagnosis. They measured the pulse. So, things that we sort of take for granted as being modern. No. The only thing that is new is that which has been forgotten. No, so much of this isn't new at all. We're not discovering it, we're rediscovering it.
Rediscovering. That's so true. So true.
Yeah, rediscovering. So, as I said, so the heart was the center of the circulatory system, but it was not only the center, it was the center of the movement of the blood throughout the body, and the blood itself was considered like a sacred river. I don't know what else to say, because they knew that the blood was how essential to life it was. So it was a life-giving, a life-carrying aspect of the body. And so, but it didn't just have a physical or physiological meaning for the ancients, or even that's true in Africa today.
Mm-hmm.
The blood and the heart have I don't know if I use the word metaphysical, but I can't use it. Yeah, there's that physical or physiological aspect of it, but there's also the spiritual and metaphysical part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've already kind of alluded to already.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, and this is some of it we're beginning to realize, the body, your body, my body, anybody, and that includes animals, humans, and plants, has more than one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It has the physical aspect, and we know all about that. Okay, we do dissections and we observe, what people do. But the body radiates energy and is contained in energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the relationship between human beings and other human beings is more energetic than anything else. But it's not just human beings and other human beings and the world around them, and especially living things, animals, plants, etc. There's an energetic connection to the world, and it goes all the way out into the heavens, into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think of us that the earth was some little, and by the way, they knew the earth was round, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that only because they had sent fleets to what is now America.
Okay.
Now I'm going to do another little bit of digression. When Columbus got to America, he never got to the mainland, by the way. He only got to what are the Caribbean islands. And the so-called Indians, whatever you want to call them, Native Americans, local, they told him, oh, there's a whole group of black people who live over there in Central America, what is now Panama. And they've been there. This is not just Van Sertima saying this is what the Indians told Columbus.
Right.
Now, Columbus never saw them. He never went exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So black people had been in Americas for, Van Sertima says, at least in 700 BC, or maybe even earlier. And that was not fanciful. Now, like I said, I'm getting off. But let me kind of get back on track.
Let me ask you a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We were watching we were listening to something on one of our road trips recently, and there was a native kind of shaman from New Zealand who was saying that all animals have 9 senses, and
have what senses?
We were thinking about
say it again.
9 instead of the 5, that he pointed out, and I've been just observing animals, how when the tsunami was coming towards Japan, the animals started going up in the mountains, and people are standing there watching the animals. Wow, I wonder where they're going, and it's like, in a lot of ways,
where they going?
Yes, the animals tap into those 9 senses better than we do. But I don't mean to digress. But as you were talking about energy.
No. That's an important digression. That's an exactly important digression. But what you're showing, again, is something that the ancients and the traditional peoples know, that there is this nexus. There's this connection between all living things. And we kind of, in America, or the Western world anyway, lost that slowly but surely. And individuals are pulling back, are bringing, because when they either rejected it or lost it or stopped paying attention to it, things started going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
Because you know why? Because you don't have any sense of the sacred in the world around you.
Right.
You see, among traditional peoples, wherever you find them, Africa, Asia, the Americas, etc., there's always a sense that everything is sacred, has a sacred quality to it. Everything is of the divine, participates in the divine. And so there's this interconnection.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
like I said, it doesn't just stop. The Earth is a little tiny speck of something here in a universe that we can't even contemplate on how vast it is, and yet it all impacts us. It all impacts us.
That is so true.
That's why the ancient Egyptians. That's why the Egyptians had priests who every waking moment, what they did was study the heavens. That's what they did.
That makes sense because they knew.
They, of course, had a. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that's true. I think it was a little bit of a delay. So I'm trying to not speak so much. We're just listening to you. I was just doing the amen thing. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, but the thing is, so, and when you go to Egypt, if you haven't been, Imani, you've been once, haven't you?
I have not. I'm looking forward to your trip next year in 2024.
Yeah,
to be there.
2024. That's right, July.
Yes.
They, like when I was there, the last time I was up late, I couldn't sleep. I was just went out into the veranda up, and we were on Elephantine Island in the middle of the Nile, and you could see that the river. You could see the river flowing north, because the river flows. It's one of the few rivers, if not the only river, that flows from south to north. So the ancient Egyptians said up south and down north. South was, where everything was, where everything was.
Right.
And I said, oh, this is just a feeling. I said, oh, I see why they made the river divine, because they did, by Nile. They would not pollute the Nile. The Nile itself was made their lives possible, and it was considered divine. And I had that essence. There's something about the Nile essence that touched me. And I said, I tell you about this because I can't explain it. I think you have to see it and feel it before you talking about it.
Absolutely.
So I could see what the ancient Egyptians, the way in which they made the Nile divine itself.
Mm-hmm.
And what can I tell you?
So Dr. Finch, let me just.
Now, the other thing too.
Can you hear me, Dr. Finch?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to.
I can hear you.
I wanted to give a shout out to some good friends of ours. Dr. Virginia Floyd is on the line with us, and I know she's traveled.
Oh,
with
she is.
You. She's in the
wait a minute,
audience.
she's watching this.
She's watching this live, absolutely.
Wow.
And Michelle Maddox is
who
also on the line. And Michelle said,
yeah.
She wanted me to remind you of when we talked about the weekends when you went to Holyoke and other places. She said that she remembers you from back then, and you were such a gentleman, a perfect gentleman. So just wanted to let you know, people are watching, people that we love and know are online with us. And certainly if any of you have questions or want to contribute, you can type in your message and we'll get it to Dr. Finch. And Michelle Maddox says she's on with us.
She's going in April.
She's going to.
I'm gonna come back to Virginia Floyd here in a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Interesting. I didn't know that she was. I know she was online, or she was going to be on the line, because now we're going to move into, because I took a small trip with just a really small group of people. One year when I was in Senegal, we went to Dogon country in Mali. Whoa. That's almost, I can't even, and Virginia was on that trip. She likes people call her Ginger, but I like her full name, so I call her Virginia. Anyway,
Okay.
but what you could see, when you go there to Dogon country, at the bottom of those cliffs, the Bandiagara cliffs, you're standing and you're looking up there. You're looking up 20 feet, 30 feet up in the cliffs, and there's a city.
Mm.
And the city goes for 123 miles.
Wow. 123 miles.
Yeah. And that's the city. It's not the city of the Dogon. There were some people who were in Dogon country before the Dogon, the Bandiagara Cliffs is what they got. They were called the Tellem, Tellem. And they apparently were the ones who created the city. And it goes for 123 miles up there in the cliffs.
Wow.
And so there's so much of Africa that we don't have any sense of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so true.
Wow.
So was Dr. Floyd on that trip with you when you saw the
Yeah,
Dogon?
she was on that trip. Yeah, that's right. She was on that trip because I was determined to go. You see, you can't go to Dogon country now. You know why?
Why?
Because it's being invaded by other people.
Okay.
Making war against them.
That's horrible. Horrible.
Anyway,
Dr. Finch, we have
so and it's. I'm sorry.
We had one question from one of our producers, Toya Glenn. She asked, "How does one join that next trip with you to Egypt, Dr. Finch?" She'll put it on the screen. I don't know if you have the information of who to contact.
Okay. All right. Yeah, but it's funny you should say that because my wife wanted me to get this in, and I forgot. That's what you're asking.
We won't forget. Yeah.
I'm going to give you. Yeah, the address I gave you. Send any. Let me see. We'll send you a flyer. But write to Charles S. Finch. You can. Okay, there's two ways of doing this.
Okay, so we should put it on the
charles@gmail.com. Huh?
No, it's there. Yeah.
You see that there on the screen, or you could even write to me. You know what I'm talking about. I'm getting old, so I can't even get my words out. Our address is 4362 Charles S. Finch at 4362 Azalea, Azalea, 4362 Azalea Walk, Ellenwood, Georgia, 30294. You can write. You can either send an email or send send a mail to that address, and we will make sure that whoever you are, wants to go, will get information. I have. Here it is.
You have the flyer you were mentioning.
I don't think you can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see this.
Put it closer. Yeah, it's good. Put it a little closer. The gift of the Nile tour. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yep. See it.
Gift of the Nile. Let me read it to you. Maybe Gift of the Nile. Can you still hear me? Because I'm only seeing my face, and you're. Hello. You still there?
Yeah, we're here.
See you.
We can hear you.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Let me read. I'm going to read it and then show it. Gift of the Nile tour. This is my 11th tour. Okay. July 18th through 30th, 2024. Now the thing is, it costs $5,400 from New York. So it costs $5,400 from New York. Now, what you can do? Oh, I do have the address here, the top. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that address up there? No,
hold it higher.
Not. Okay, I'll just. But it's kind of light.
That's okay. They'll get in touch.
Let me just again repeat that.
Okay.
Yeah, but let me go ahead and repeat. Go ahead and say it. 5665 New North Side Drive, Suite 150, Atlanta, 30328.
Can you repeat that?
5665. Yeah, 5665 Suite 150, Atlanta, Georgia 30328. You can call. I'll give you a telephone number. You can talk to Mary. 404-767-2727. The tour, again, July 18th through 30th, 2024, $5,400 just from New York. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I gotta say this.
Oh.
The book that's
Thank
my
you,
new
Ella.
book that's coming out, my third book.
Yay.
Yeah, she reminded me. The only thing that has to happen with that book is that she's doing the index.
Mm-hmm.
First book I've ever written. It's gonna be a third book that's going to have an index. It's and it's going to be out. It'll be out in March, either March or April. I'm not sure which. Nile Valley Civilization, a 10,000-year history.
Wow,
Spring
that's going to be
of 2023.
Mm.
You can go to charlessfinch.com for a pre-order. It'll cost I think it's $35 because it's a 500-page book.
Wow.
It's the most ambitious book I've ever written. I've written 2 others. Okay,
It'll be worth
let me
it.
repeat it again.
Mm-hmm.
Nile Valley Civilization, a 10,000-year history. Spring of 2023. Go to charlessfinch.com for a pre-order.
Wonderful. And I want to say that, number one, the book is going to be phenomenal because you're like a walking encyclopedia. You have so much practical experience just because you've been there, you've studied, you're just a wealth of information. And I also want to let our audience know that I've always wanted to go to Egypt. And I decided years ago that I was not that I wasn't going to go unless Dr. Finch was leading it, but I was just hoping that he was leading at least one more tour to Egypt. So I am so excited about the trip in July of 2024. If you really want to go and have an experience with somebody who's knowledgeable and who can really explain what you're seeing. I mean, I know people go and they're like, oh, that was interesting. That was cute, but to have someone really break it down to you, there's really no better person than Dr. Finch. So we're excited about coming with you, going with you on that.
Yeah. You mentioned Ginger Floyd is watching this. She's been twice.
Okay.
She's been twice, and she's been to and others,
Great. Well,
others, also. And yes, and let me say this: whether you go with me or not, if you never go anywhere else in your life, that is the one place you have to go. I'm not saying you should; you have to go.
Have to go.
Yeah, it costs.
I love that.
But you have to go, and when you get there, why I say that. And it's either 10 or 11 lectures. I do a lecture every night.
Oh, wow.
On the subject.
That's amazing. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
Dr. Finch, we're out of time. And so we have to have you come back. Thank our guests for joining us. And we hope that this particular episode and all of our episodes can be seen on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at any time. So if you missed part of it or if you want to share this with your friends and family, please do share it with everyone. And Virginia Floyd said everyone should put this Finch trip to Egypt on their must-do list. You'll be forever changed. It is such an unbelievable experience. Please go if you have the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Floyd. We appreciate you. And again, thank you, Michelle Maddox, for tuning in and everybody. So we're just grateful to all of you.
Thank you all, and we'll see you back here next week with another episode of our vodcast podcast, yours, Health and Wellness podcast.
Okay, I'll stumble over it too.
Yeah.
Progressively yours. All right.
Yours. That's